Good morning, Kathy.
Good morning.
Okay, we're just hanging out for a few minutes, giving folks a chance to join us, so that we can be sure we have our quorum. We are expecting to have a quorum based on our feedback, so I'm not worried about that. But we do have a couple of people who let us know this morning that they had urgent issues come up. So hopefully they will. Maybe we'll just wait one more minute and then just go ahead and start, and then we'll reassess for the quorum once we get going if you want. It's up to you, Yama.
Do we have quorum?
Not yet.
Well, we can go through some of the non-voting stuff. So just to get us started, because I know time is always
we might as well, because
so yes.
we might as well go ahead and get
We got a
started.
lot.
And
yeah.
we do have a lot on the agenda today, but we're very
Yes.
close to our quorum, so I'm not
Okay.
not
Okay,
worried.
let's proceed. Okay, good. Good morning, everybody. We're so glad to have you all here today on Thursday, May 18th, for the Durham PreK Governance Committee. I am Inyoma Iruka. My pronoun is she, her, hers at UNC Chapel Hill. Next slide, please. We're going to go ahead and get our meeting started. So it has officially started. And thanks for those who are joining through our YouTube streaming. As usual, we're going to obviously do the welcoming. So please, everybody who's joining us here, which is probably the Zoom side of it, in the chat box, please type your name, your agency, organization, or program, wherever applicable, your title, role, and anything that might be helpful for the group to know about you. So, so if you could take a moment to do that, just so we can continue to get to know each other. I assume a few of us have only been together by Zoom. Some of us were in person before the pandemic. So this is a way for us at least to get to know names and organizations and those sort of things. Do you, Linda, do you want to take a moment to welcome Katie, or do you have a particular slide time you want to do that?
No, we don't have a slide today. Actually,
oh, she just flashed.
Maggie, yeah. So
Maggie,
Maggie West is joining us today. She's a brand new staff person with our team and has been hired to develop and implement our early childhood apprenticeship program that we received a private donation to get started, a seed donation for in particular for Durham PreK. The apprenticeship program is being built out, and we'll definitely be doing some presentations to you guys about it in the future. But Maggie comes to us from Durham Tech and has been here about a month now. I think it's close to a month, maybe over a month, time flies. But we really are glad that she has joined us from Durham Tech.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Maggie.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Maggie. Awesome.
Okay.
Next slide, please. Is that on you? Is that your?
That's just our protocols. I'm just checking to see. Hey, good morning, Christy.
Good morning.
We're just going through, and we are waiting on a quorum to get really deep into the agenda, but we're moving forward to keep going. So.
All right. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late. I have a meeting to overlap. So
you're fine. Well, just glad you're here, Christy. Good morning. Again, for those just virtual. Good morning. Just for those virtual meeting protocols we've had, obviously, I'm outside, so I apologize in advance in case there's some noise here. So mute unless speaking and camera on where and if possible. Use the chat box at any time for comments and questions. And of course, as usual, be patient with technical challenges, including that gray box that seems to always follow us somewhere. And of course, if you have to leave early, message. Linda, should we message you, or who should we message?
It's fine. You can message me. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a couple of people who do have to leave early already let us know. So thank you for that.
Okay, good. Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. So again, feel free. We're going to obviously use a lot of the reaction button for voting. So just be familiar with that for those who may not be. It's on your right-hand side on the reactions. So you can also, if you're on camera, use your actual real hands if you choose. So with that, I think, Linda, my pass it to you. We're going to go ahead and, do we have quorum yet to vote on the minutes?
Yeah, we don't yet, but what we can do, let's move to the next slide, Tosh.
Yeah.
And I'll just run over what we're going to be covering, which you guys have seen by, looking at the agenda and stuff, but we are going to approve our meeting notes. We're going to consider the end of year spending authorization. And then we're going to spend the bulk of our meeting talking about the proposed reimbursement plans for next school year. We did structure carefully the agenda to put at the end things that we may not be able to get to. And if we don't, then you will have materials to review, and we will follow up over email with just some additional information. And we, if in the meeting today you decide to defer anything, our next meeting is in July. We typically don't meet in July unless we need to for voting purpose for some issue that comes up for the new school year. And we do typically, if we have the July meeting, it's only for an hour, and it's for the purpose of something that's timely. And so that will be one option to defer if you choose to, although not ideal, obviously. But we, after the meeting today, we'll be sending out the meeting invites for all of next year for your calendar pleasure. And we did stay, since we didn't hear any objections, we stayed with our third Thursday of every other month schedule that we had previously set up. Next slide. Okay, so where we are, is we need one more voting member to have quorum. So what we can do is we can skip the notes part and come back to it when we get another voting member. I am expecting, like I said, from the feedback from membership, I am expecting the quorum, so probably just running late. So if we can move on to the next slide and we can start talking about this, we just won't be able to vote if that's what you desire.
Yeah, I say let's proceed. We'll come back to vote on the minutes, but I feel like let's proceed just because time is of the essence. So yeah.
Yes, I agree. Okay, so if I'll ask the team to, in case I don't realize that a voting member comes in, if we get a quorum while we're chatting, please let me know. So in our March meeting, we talked about the possibility of a classroom bonus. Typically what happens in the last few years is we ask you for an authorization to spend, what usually happens with the spending is there's some amount of money left over, which, is unfortunate that we can't spend down to the exact dime on our regular budget. But as you can imagine, as you're going through the year, spending fluctuates, and we project very closely, but we always are going to have a little bit of money at the end, typically, unless we're in a crisis. So we would need an authorization from you, or you can choose to revert the money to spend whatever dollars are available. And we suggested in our March meeting that might be for a classroom bonus. Next slide. You'll recall, you asked us to get some feedback from providers regarding the possibility of a year-end spending authorization. We did, as part of our surveying of providers, we did talk with them. We did a Zoom survey. So we talked with them, and then we conducted a survey. And the survey really was in two parts. One was related to the potential classroom bonus. The other was related to the proposed spending plans. But the focus for the bonus payment was asking, would it be helpful, and what it would be used on, potentially not committing anyone. and then what the impact of increased costs has been on their programs and from inflation. And then we also wanted to ask what their opinion was about whether the bonus would be restricted or unrestricted. So we asked specifically in terms of the impact of inflation, we asked specifically about food, utilities, rent, staff compensation and benefits, and classroom materials. And that's obviously displayed there in green. But we also asked them open-endedly what else they would want to share in terms of what they have found to be impactful in terms of increased expenses. And that those items are the items that they specifically mentioned that were not directly asked about. And you can see obviously just like for all of us in our household budgets, food is the biggest. Food was the resounding item that the site directors mentioned as the issue. And I think that was a no-brainer. Obviously, we all heard that, but it was confirmed by that feedback from providers. We did in the handout we sent you before the meeting, there's a lot more description about the survey, but I think that what really stood out to me was that the providers were really thoughtful in their answers about how a bonus might make a difference in their program. Can you go to the next slide? So, all of them said a bonus would be helpful, that's not surprising, but all of them also said that it would be most helpful for it to be unrestricted because they felt strongly that they would be able to assess what their needs were and use that money, take that opportunity to use the money where they felt it was most needed. I think that what was really interesting was that the providers talked a lot about readiness for the upcoming school year. Some providers talked about that it would feel good to them to be able to have money at the end of the year that they would then be investing in those classrooms for the new school year. And that was, different than thinking about replenishing during the year. And so it's a positive and a negative, obviously, about a year-end bonus, because ideally the money would really benefit those children who are there right now. However, this bonus is made possible by leftover funds, and we can't really allocate it during the year if we were going to do it. So Yama, we do have a quorum now, and therefore if the group has any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. But if you'll go to the next slide, we would like to ask for your consideration to authorize the year-end bonus. Any feedback or questions that we can answer?
So, and then just so Linda, so basically the money has to be spent by this year, right? But in their school year.
Yes. So if we don't spend it, it will revert to the county.
Yep,
And
yep.
historically, one option would be for us to ask the county to let us carry forward any unspent funds. We have not asked for that because typically the proportion of the budget is small, and typically we have used any leftover money with permission from the county for to support the programs. I will remind you that any vote we make, you would be voting to authorize a year-end spend out, but we would double check any votes this group makes as an advisory group that involve financial allocations. We do have to double check those with the county. So the recommendation would go to the county for us to do that. Right.
That's right.
And for this, if we do vote, we would need those site-based providers who receive resources to recuse themselves. So right now, I know that would be Derek, not sure if there's another provider on
Not
right
sure.
now. So,
Okay.
any
Okay.
other questions about a bonus?
Any other questions? I guess the only thought, because we don't have to talk about whether to be unrestricted or not, correct? Because it sounds like
Well,
that could be part of the vote if need be.
yes, if you want to restrict it, we would want it to be part of a motion.
Yeah.
Like we would if you
Okay.
don't specify, then it will be unrestricted.
Or restricted. Okay. Do we have any motion to vote for the Durham PreK classroom room bonus to move forward for end of year spending authorization? Any motion?
Dr. Hardy is on, and she also would need to recuse herself as she's representing Durham Public Schools.
Durham Public Schools. Thank you for that. Right. Any motion or okay.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the Durham PreK classroom bonus and to make that unrestricted.
I'll
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Sharon, for a second. Any questions, comments before we take a full vote? Okay, so all the yays. If you can use your reaction button to the right, or if you're on video, feel free to also use your hand so we can just look to be sure. For those who can vote. Okay, I'm just typing. Thank you. And then any nays, thank you for that. You can put your hand down. Thank you. Okay, any nays, and please keep it up just so we can I can go scroll through the panel here. Any nays? Feel free to unmute if need be. All right, so it looks like this motion has passed, Linda.
Okay, great. I'm sure the providers will, based
Yes.
on the survey,
Yeah.
the providers will be very, very excited, very happy. So for that vote, just for clarification, we had Derek representing Head Start and Dr. Hardy representing Durham Public Schools that recused themselves from the vote. We do have other providers joining us as we speak, and they weren't part of the vote, so we're in good shape. Okay, next slide. Well,
Should we
actually,
go back
let's
to the
go
minutes real
backwards.
quick? Let's go back to the
Yeah.
minutes. Yeah, let's go to the minutes real quick to get that approved.
Yeah,
So
now
any
that we have our
motion?
quorum.
Perfect. Yes. Any motion to approve the minutes from March 2023? And I probably should ask if there's any revisions needed to the notes, if there was any revisions or comments to the notes before I ask for the vote. Okay. A motion to approve the meeting notes.
I make a motion to approve the meeting notes as stated.
Thank you,
Thank
Darnella.
you. Is that Darnella? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Any second?
I'll second. It's Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. All right. Any questions or concerns? Okay. So I'll just do the nays. I feel like that's probably easier. So any nays, feel free to either use your reaction button to let me know if you're a nay. So no to approving the meeting notes. And feel free to also use your camera to make note of that. I'm scrolling through really quickly, make sure I don't miss anybody who may be nay. All right, the motion has passed to approve the meeting notes from March 2023. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, and back to you, Linda.
Okay, so we're going to move into more discussion about the coming school year 24. So we're going to first talk about rates in terms of, we did talk in March and give you context for other program rates that affect our community, but we have updated that information. It's a very dynamic situation at this time with rates. And so we're going to talk about that briefly, and we're going to review and remind you of our previous rate increases. And then we're going to talk with you about our recommendation for a rate increase. Next slide. Okay, so the thing is, this is the slide you've seen before, but it has been changed from our last meeting because you'll see that we've added a bar that for a potential subsidy rate. And that is not current. It is being talked about quite a bit at the state level. And so we wanted to be completely transparent and bring that up as a potential change to the subsidy reimbursement rate for 5-star centers in Durham County. So we wanted to provide you with this, the overall pre-K chart showing those comparisons to our Durham pre-K rate. Our current rate is $1,350 a month. The thing to know is that in private care, the Durham average 4-year-old rate for 5-star centers, has increased. It kind of goes up and down based on private tuition. You can imagine what a dynamic environment that is. But at the present, the average private tuition is $1,212, and we provide you with that information as context for what we are reimbursing for Durham pre-K, given that Durham pre-K does have quite a number of quality requirements that are costly. The biggest one being our requirement that teachers get paid on the public school salary scale, and that teacher assistants, instructional assistants also have a mandated base pay, hourly pay rate that's higher than some communities. In our Durham pre-K realm, we find that some of our instructional assistants, the sites are choosing to pay more than our minimum. But typically in the child care market, our instructional assistant rate is higher. But I think that the key thing here is that we know inflation is affecting everything, obviously. That's a no-brainer. So we wanted to provide you with context as we move forward to ask for an increase. Next slide. Okay, and then some additional context will remind you that for Durham pre-K, we're paying for a 6.5-hour day. So when we compare our reimbursement rate to private child care, that is more, the private child care programs generally are providing care for those rates, their rates, for more than 6.5 hours. But the NC, when we compare to the NC pre-K rate, obviously that is a 6.5-hour day also. And as I mentioned, we do have higher standards. The range in private child care is something we also pay attention to. Obviously, in 5-star care in Durham, the range presently, you can see, is so broad, from 866 to 1840. And the reality is that that is very typical, in particular in our more populated urban communities, that you will have a very wide range in the private pay fees in a community. And again, that the private tuition rate is for more than a 6.5-hour day, but does provide good context to what it's costing to access care in Durham County. Next slide. So just to remind you of where we have been, in May of 2022, we increased our reimbursement rate by 4% to $1,300 per child per month. And then in January 2023, we also increased it again by 4% to $1,350. So we've been at the $1,350 rate since January of 2023. We are recommending that we move to another 4% increase, that we move to a $1,400 reimbursement rate. And, want to open it up for your questions and discussion about the possibility of voting for a rate increase, irrespective of any other changes we might make to the reimbursement plans.
Okay, the floor is open for those who may have questions or comments. And so in essence, increasing the rates will start in the next school year, correct? For the next fiscal year, correct?
Yes.
So, okay, great. Any questions or comments
And
about?
yeah, and
uh,
unless,
the-
you know, obviously, unless you direct differently. I mean, obviously, this year we did multiple increases, and I think that, you know, we're open. This is just where we started with as a recommendation for you to consider.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Obviously, yeah, any questions or comments? I'll open the floor.
Okay, next slide. So we're asking if you will consider making a motion to vote.
All right, well, the floor is open if for those, if there's a vote or at least, sorry, an action to recommend reimbursement rate for the 2023-2024 school year. The team has recommended a 4% increase to look to get it actually to 1,400. So to move it to 1,400 reimbursement rate. Do I have a motion to approve? Just a motion. Let me. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Darnell. I think I heard you on mute turn.
Okay, I just didn't want to make up all the motions, but I didn't hear nobody responding. I make a motion to increase to recommend that the reimbursement rate for the 2023-2024 school year be increased by another 4%. Is that the actual motion we have?
That is the motion, yes. Okay, so I have a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank
So
you, Sharon. And we have a
seconded.
second.
Mhm. And we would need to recuse, so Derek from Head Start and Dr. Hardy from Durham Public Schools.
Durham Public Schools.
And
Thank you.
I'm not sure if, and June is on, and she would also from Yates Baptist as one of our Durham Pre-K providers would need to recuse herself also. I don't think there's anyone else on that needs to recuse.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, I mean, is there any questions or comments? I mean, I don't want to take the silence to mean that we're all yes. I just want to make sure that if people have any sort of like concerns about the an additional increase for 2023, you know, we want to make sure that we're thinking both, you know, obviously current, but also future. So again, if there are any concerns, this is the time to bring it up before we go for the vote for the full committee. Okay. As I hear none, and I also don't see anything in the chat box, I'll go ahead and move to actually just ask for, are there any names for the motion that recommended reimbursement rate for the 2023-2024 school year to increase it from 1,350 to 1,400? So any nays? So if you are a nay, feel free to either put in the chat box or feel free to make a motion. And we'll come to, I'll just look through the screen. So any nays?
I don't see any.
I do not see any either. Okay, so the motion has passed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
And I do want to say that I think, you know, obviously we did talk about this in March, and so I'm taking the lack of robust conversation is really because you had good information to consider ahead of the meeting. So
Right.
Thank you very much for all of y'all's attention to all the materials that we've sent. Next slide. Okay, so the next part is where, you know, obviously we have planned a lot of discussion. For the new fiscal year, new school year, we propose a new payment plan that would consider making a pre-service payment, which is an additional payment in August based upon seat allocation. And then to make the remaining payments for the school year for the 10 months of the school year with children based on enrollment and attendance in alignment with the NC Pre-K reimbursement method. So this proposed payment plan, you've received some information ahead of time, and we talked about briefly at a March meeting. You go to the next slide. And so I just want to report back to you about what's been done for those of you may not know. From your guidance in March, we went back after the meeting and we developed site-specific reimbursement estimates. We used existing enrollment information from the current school year to do individualized projections and estimates for each site. And then we met with the leadership of every private Durham PreK site. So 100% of the privately owned Durham PreK sites, we met with each one of them individually after having sent them their individualized report. We went over in a Zoom meeting, we went over their report with them, answered any questions that they had really great conversation with almost every provider in terms of a lot of interest, a lot of really good questions. And then once we concluded the questioning part, we then asked them, while we were in the Zoom, we asked them to complete a survey. So we went through the questions at every survey and got their feedback. So we gathered feedback on the payment model from all of the early education programs, either owners and or directors. Some sites had multiple people in the meeting. It was up to the owner to determine who should be there. Then in addition to that, we held 2 information sessions that were optional for our governance membership to review and understand the model, just for some extra opportunity for study and questions ahead of the meeting today. We did feel that those sessions were highly valuable. We hope that they contributed to building trust, that we want to be transparent, and that we want to be sure that we are accountable to all of our constituencies when we are making proposals for change. So from this point, we are going to stop sharing this slide deck, and we're going to move over to for Joy Turner to share her screen, and we're going to go over the first part of the proposal document. And Joy's gonna, for those of you who attended an information session, you have seen this. And the the housekeeping piece, you can go ahead and stop sharing the slide deck, Tosh. Okay, while they're working on that, I will continue. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over an overview of the proposed plan, which those of you who attended an information session, you already saw that. You already had that information. So it will be a duplicate for those of you who attended, and we appreciate those of you who were able to. And then once we go over the first part, that's an overview, then we will come back to our slide deck and ask you to consider taking your break and to vote on going into closed session. So I'm going to turn this over to Joy Turner, and we're going to review the proposed payment model change with you.
Good morning. So this is the same handout you received earlier. I'm just going to go over it together. So first, I just want you to know that the calculations in this document are purely estimates based on the site's current seat allocations for this school year, their current teachers' BK status, and the average enrollment for the months of December through March. These are not guaranteed payment amounts, and they could change based on changes in any of these factors for the next school year. These are just the best estimates that we could provide at this time to give you information to consider. Next, I just want to do a quick summary of the Durham PreK payment model over time. So pre-COVID, NC PreK has always paid based on enrollment and attendance, so that seats that were empty did not receive a payment. When Durham PreK started, we followed NC PreK's payment practices due to the number of Durham PreK seats that receive funding from both Durham PreK and NC PreK. And that was the PreK payment standard that we adopted at the beginning. During COVID, from April 2020 through June 2022, NC PreK made payment based on allocated seats. meaning that sites received payment for empty seats, and Durham PreK followed suit with that decision. Paying on allocation was critical during this period as pre-K enrollment numbers were low due to pandemic-related issues, and that was really key to keeping pre-K going during that difficult time. In the current school year, NC Pre-K paid the first 3 months of the year based on allocations, and then switched back to their original enrollment and attendance payment model for the remainder of the school year. However, this committee voted to pay Durham Pre-K seats based on allocations for the full school year. However, paying Durham Pre-K seats differently from how NC Pre-K pays creates a high risk of payment error that is very challenging. It also affects the quality of data that we have to report out regarding child enrollment. And now before we move on, I do want to clarify what is meant when I say enrollment and attendance-based payments. Paying according to this model means that seats that do not have a child enrolled do not receive a payment. If a child is enrolled, payment is based on the child's attendance. However, the guidelines regarding attendance are very flexible. Children must miss more than half the days of the month before their payment would be prorated. And so in most months, this means that only children who miss more than 10 days would have a prorated payment based on their attendance. It's rare for children to miss this many days so that it affects their payment. I looked at our data from this year, and in the 5 months when we were paying NC Pre-K based on allocations, only 12 children had their payments prorated due to attendance-related issues. So when we're talking, it truly is enrollment, not attendance, that impacts providers' payments the most when we're talking about the enrollment and attendance-based model. And so for that reason, as we have our discussion today, I'm going to use the term enrollment-based payments because that is more accurate to the fact that attendance, it is rare that attendance has a huge impact on the amounts that we're looking at today. So as we're looking forward to next school year, in order to align with NC Pre-K's model of payment, as well as still provide additional financial support to providers, we're proposing a new Durham Pre-K payment model. So this new model would make a pre-service payment to sites in August after they sign their contract, and then would pay for the 10 months of the school year based on child enrollment. The pre-service payment would be calculated at 15% of the site's maximum annual payment based on allocated seats and current teacher VK status. So we would calculate, what is their maximum annual payment if they're 100% filled all year, and we would take 15% of that, and they would get that as an additional payment in the month of August. It is not a prepayment, it is not an advance, it is an additional payment over and above what they would receive normally through the 10 months of the program. This pre-service payment would assist with cash flow at the beginning of the year and would also account for up to a 15% vacancy rate throughout the year. The result would be that sites with less than a 15% vacancy rate would actually see an increase in their reimbursement above what they would receive through the allocations-based model that we've been using this year. And again, just want to emphasize, this is an additional payment. It is not an advance that would be subtracted later. It's an additional payment that they would receive. Linda, you're
Sorry, thanks. Mute myself and forget. So before we move on to really talk about specific sites and the implications of the model, want to take a temperature, see if you have questions at this point that are not specific to the actual site, questions about the overall proposed payment model. And I know,
Linda, just clarify for us too, because we haven't seen another program both in the state or outside the state doing something of this sort, correct? So we'll in essence be testing you all's really brilliant idea, right? So just wanted to make that.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, I would never say that there's nobody else doing it, but we can't find them at this point. We think it's a pretty progressive option. I think that there are programs at in other states and historically at some time periods, NC Pre-K has paid some classroom bonuses or startup dollars at different periods. Some different programs across the country have done that, but an actual recurring extra pre-service payment to address cash flow and to address vacancy rates, to address the fact that, you know, teachers come back to work for planning purposes before children. We haven't found anybody who's doing that, and we were pretty excited about the possibility of addressing a long-term need that's been brought up for many, many years by the private provider community in particular, about the long gap between the start of their teachers and the actual payment.
This is Xavier. I just want to note also in that same vein, a theme in this meeting so far, and I'm not saying any of this is new, it just feels very normalized, where we are really going deep with practitioners and getting their viewpoints and insights. And just want to again note that doing so in an intentional way, in a way that's being normalized in this community, is refreshing. It makes me feel, at least, that the decisions we're making are getting closer to the root causes and sustainable solutions. So I just want to say thank you for the work that it takes to actually go out into the community, into the homes and the businesses, and ask the questions. So I know it takes a lot of, I appreciate that it takes a lot of time from those who are working in your field to actually make that effort. So I just want to note that.
Thank you. We really appreciate hearing from all the early childhood experts in our community, those working directly with children being the most ignored sometimes, and we want to definitely lift up all of that feedback. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so Joy's going to stop sharing her screen. We're doing this dance, and we're going to go back, and Tasha's going to share our slide deck, because we're asking you to consider making a motion to go into closed session. We'd like to do a 5-minute break and then go into closed session, because we want to be able to talk deeply about individual sites and the implications of this model for individual programs. Tosh, can you move to the next slide? But based on the timing for the meeting, we're a little ahead of schedule, which is awesome, but this would be the best time to do a break and then to convene in closed session. We want to entertain a motion for closed session, but before we actually do that, we have learned that, and I appreciate the feedback from the provider community, we've learned that there may be a letter from providers that our membership, one of our members has been asked to read, and we want to take a moment and ask if there is information from providers that you would like to share. If there is a letter, if you'd like to read that before we go into closed session. I'm going to check on the status of that.
Yes. Hi, Linda and the committee. We have the letter. I'm not sure if Darnella would like to read it, or I would like to. I could read it too, but I think Darnella's on. So Darnella, did you like? I'm sorry.
June, if you could read it, I never got it, or
Oh, okay.
I didn't get a chance to check my email this morning. So if you would read it, that would be great.
Okay, so would you like me to read the letter now to the committee? Is that the
if I haven't, since I'm not aware of what's in it, if you think it's relevant to this, which I assume it is, then this may be a good time for you to share that before we go into closed session.
That's what I would say. Yep, I agree. Yes.
Okay, so this is the letter. To the members of the Durham PreK Governance Committee, as the end of the 2022-23 school year approaches, we would like to extend our appreciation for your unwavering support during this academic year. Your vote to reimburse Durham PreK programs based on slot allocations for the full school year has been invaluable, and we are proud to be part of a community whose leaders understand the challenges childcare centres faced during the pandemic. However, we know that the childcare industry is still in crisis, and most centres are struggling to keep their doors open due to staffing shortages and decreased enrolment and revenue. Your continued support is critical in helping centres address economic and staffing challenges until the childcare system stabilises. To this end, we strongly advocate for Durham PreK to continue reimbursing centres based on slot allocations through the 2023-24 school year and beyond, and to implement changes to instructional assistance education requirements. The attendance-based payment policy has always been unfair to childcare providers. This policy penalizes centres for absences that are beyond their control, such as when parents take their children on vacation, or when children are sick, or families relocate in the middle of the school year. Reimbursing centres based on slot allocations would provide centres with a stable source of income, allowing them to better plan and budget for the future, pay teachers higher wages, and provide quality care and education to all children, regardless of their attendance. Furthermore, reimbursing centres based on slot allocations would promote equity across all childcare programs in the community. Children in low-income households and families with unstable work schedules are more likely to miss school days due to financial or logistical reasons. This means that childcare centres participating in public programs like childcare subsidy, Durham PreK and NC PreK are often underfunded, perpetuating inequality. An allocations-based payment policy would help level the playing field and is a fair and equitable approach that benefits both the centres and families. It will allow centres to remain operational and provide essential services to our communities, while providing families with quality childcare and the peace of mind that their child's spot is secure, regardless of their background. To address the issue of teacher shortages, we suggest that the committee reevaluate the current educational requirements for DPK instructional assistants. A Child Development Associate, that's a CDA certification, does not meet the education standards for a DPK instructional assistant, although the NC PreK program recognizes it. It is worth noting that neither program currently considers years of experience, but we believe this is an area where change could be implemented. Reevaluating the current educational requirements for DPK instructional assistants could be a step in the right direction to address the issue of teacher shortages. By recognizing the value of experience and alternative certifications, such as the Child Development Associate, CDA, we may be able to bring in talented individuals who can make a positive impact in the classroom. It is important to consider all options to ensure that students receive the best education possible, and this includes exploring new ways to attract and retain qualified teaching staff. In conclusion, we would like to express our sincere appreciation for your ongoing support and commitment to improving and preserving childcare programs in our community. Continuing to reimburse centres based on slot allocations and reevaluating educational requirements for DPK teacher assistants will make an immediate and positive impact on centres by addressing our most immediate needs. We are grateful to be part of a community that values quality education and care for all children, and we remain dedicated to working together toward a brighter future. Thank you again for your support, and we look forward to continuing this important work together. With appreciation, the concerned and committed Durham PreK providers. And Linda, I did actually email this to you late this morning. So I don't know if you wanted to send out a copy to the committee, because this is a lot just to hear. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, you're unmuted, Linda.
There I go, talking again, muted. I will pull it off my email, June. Thank you for sending it. And, you know, we will definitely distribute it to the governance members. One question I have that maybe June, you or Janella could answer. I did speak with a couple of providers yesterday who shared with me that they were not represented by the letter. And I wondered, does the letter indicate who the collective is of providers who are part of it? Sounds like it may not name specifically. Is that something that you guys could potentially send me to send out to governance also?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. I only know of 3 providers that I'm aware of, but Darnella may know more than me.
Okay. Well, what we can-
Unfortunately,
Mhm.
unfortunately, Linda, I didn't get a copy of the letter, so I'm not sure who all has signed it or not.
Okay. Well, yeah, we appreciate you sharing it. And we'll follow up. I mean, we'll just send out an email asking if they would like to share, you know, who it's from. That would be, you know, helpful, because I did have a couple of providers who indicated to me that they were not, aware of a letter, or I just made some calls yesterday trying to figure out, you know, we were hoping to get a copy of the letter in advance, but we appreciate having it now, and we will forward it to governance members. And we were not aware of we've had some providers who've given feedback in the quality subcommittee meeting, which is a subcommittee of this governance committee, have brought up the issue of educational credentials for instructional assistants. It was brought up in the most recent meeting, and we are not prepared to talk about that today, but we can, you know, certainly address that in a future meeting. The feedback about the payment model obviously does affect our meeting today, and we definitely appreciate having that information, and we'll send it to the governance members. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the providers for pulling that letter together, and we definitely look forward to seeing it. And I think your point, Linda, about trying to figure out who makes up this letter group, I think will also be helpful. So thank you for that as when it's available. Okay. Anything else before we vote to break into closed session? I mean, well, before we and then we take a break, obviously, but before we actually take a break and then convene in a closed session. Anything else before that, Linda? Take a vote.
No, I will just address Kathy Polly Robinson put in the chat, shared about, you know, just thinking that it would be good to know more generally about the letter, and we won't seek to find out particular names, but we'll try to find out, you know, how much support there is for it, just as a point of information.
Yeah.
So
Great. I agree with you, Kathy. Thank you. All right. So do you want to go ahead and vote to break and then convene in closed session?
we would just need a motion for that, because we would stop the live stream to do the closed session.
That's right.
I'll make the motion that we go into closed session.
Thank you, Kathy.
I'll second.
Okay, so Derek, you're gonna move the motion forward, and then Kathy seconding. Is that correct?
Well, it's the other way around. So I think Kathy made the motion. I second.
Okay. I think I was getting. Okay, thank you. So Kathy motion, and then Derek, you second. Thank you.
Okay, and so then there's a question in the chat. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
So typically in a closed session would only be voting members and then direct support staff. But it's up to you if you want to have all of our typical members in the closed session. That's fine. What is?
We should have, yeah, we should have our members, our two members, and then for those who are able to vote can then vote. Yeah.
Okay. Is that,
Okay.
we're good for
Is there a
that?
concern for anybody? Yeah. Is everybody good with that? For those who motion, is that okay with you? For Kathy and Derek, who you guys motioned, is that okay that we allow people who are typical members to be part of this closed session? Okay. As far
Yeah,
as the
Derek
motion.
has no problem with that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so any nays to the motion that has been put forth and then second, and any nays, feel free to use your chat box and also using your hands, either the reaction hands or your actual hands. Let me see if you see any nays.
I don't see any.
Okay, I don't see. Okay, I don't see any either. So the motion has passed. So we'll go. We'll have a break for 5 minutes. We'll come back at say let's say 10:35, and we'll be in closed session at that time. Correct?
Okay. Yeah. If you can move to the next slide, Tosh, for our video purposes, and we will stop.
Okay, it looks like it's live
Okay,
now.
now
The
it is,
live
yeah.
stream is on now. Yep. Do you want to move to the
Okay.
next slide? Is that what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
You want to go
Yep.
to the next slide, please? Whatever. I don't know what I can't remember what the next slide actually is. But we can. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, so just in summary, in closed session, we have reviewed the option to provide a pre-service payment. That would be an additional payment in August based on seat allocation, and to make the remaining payments for the 10 months of the school year based on enrollment and attendance. And we would like to call you to consider a vote.
All right. Thank you for that. So now, committee members, do we have a motion to move this forward?
This is Xavier, so moved.
Thank you, Xavier. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Sharon. Any questions or comments before we take a full committee vote? Okay. With that, I'm going to ask for if there's any nay. And Linda, just to confirm, nobody's abstaining from this one, correct?
Actually, June will be
June.
abstaining as a Durham PreK provider. Derek would have been abstaining, but
But he's
he
not here.
has had to leave the meeting. And Durham Public Schools would have also abstained, but they had to leave the meeting also.
Okay.
So
Perfect. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, perfect. So just June for this vote. Any nays, please feel free to use the chat and or make a motion with your hands so we can scroll through.
Hey, Ilma, just for a point of clarification, the motion was for all
Yes.
sides, correct?
So Linda, correct me, my subject was for all sites.
the motion on the table is for all sites, since it will, the public sites were not excluded. And
right.
but you know, that's where we are for this motion.
That's right. Thank you for that, Christine. Just, yep. All right, so are there
And-
any nays? Just to confirm, I don't see any nays.
Comment, I don't know if you guys can hear, I don't know if Chris is talking, I'm sorry, I should have raised my hand. Can we revise the motion for just the private sites? I think the public schools has resources to support them going into, I think they can borrow money from other pots or something until they get their reimbursement. And they should be okay, right? This is mostly for those private providers we saw identified on the research, the information, the data that you guys collected.
So we have our amendment being proposed. And we thought we were talking about it for all programs, but I'm hearing Jonelle say this, we want it just for the private site. So is that a motion that so I guess the question is, we didn't have any nays for the last vote. So are we making an amendment to this current proposed
So
plan?
the current motion on the table to vote up or down is to include all sites in the payment plan.
That's right.
So we
Yeah.
would need to finish that vote, and if it fails, then we unless we want to accept a friendly amendment.
I would like to stick with the original motion.
And it sounds like Sharon does as well. And we did not have any nays for that one. So it looks like that motion, the motion that included everybody, public and private, passed. So Linda, in that case, I think that's the recommendation from the committee at this point.
Okay. So we will move forward to get information into contracting about that. But what will happen is, this is, again, I'll remind you that it's a recommendation to the county, and the county will accept or not, because it does involve additional resources that we have not been paying in the past because of the addition of the pre-service payment. So we'll make that recommendation. Ioma and I will send a letter on your behalf to the county manager describing the vote and the proposal. And county manager has been, as a member of governance, fully involved and received all the information up to this point. So can you
Yes.
move to the next slide real
Yes.
quick?
Well, thank you for that vote. So thank you again for all the time. Go
I
ahead.
really appreciate y'all's time. So as we indicated on the agenda, we would only cover these things if we had time, and we don't. So I encourage you to review the information in your slide deck that you received. And if you'll go to the next slide, we also just want to let you know that the Durham PreK community meeting that was planned for June is being postponed to a future date. And I'll send you an email describing, about that. But I want to let you know, if you were holding the June date, that you can release it. Next slide. And then I just encourage you to look at the, be reminded that we hope you will send us some nominations for a governance committee membership. Next slide.
Yes, please.
We encourage you to read your program update. It has some great information in there and some live links for you. And last slide. We have gone with the third Thursday of every month for our meetings. We will send you meeting invites for next year based on these dates. If there's any problem with them, we can address it at a future meeting, but these are the dates as scheduled. We do have on the calendar a July date for a 1-hour meeting if needed. That's based on if there is anything that requires a vote for the opening of school. We will let you know really by early July whether or not you can release that date from your calendar or not. So thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry we went over, but I think this was important work.
Thank you. Yes, thank you everybody for your time. And I think we say meeting has adjourned. Thank you so much. Have a great day, great week.